Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of November 9, 2020. In terms of the stock market predictions, I believe that the stock market and primarily Nasdaq and Dow Jones will go up on Monday through Wednesday and then will go down Thursday and Friday. Regardless of the direction, I think that there will likely be a reversal from Friday the 13th to Monday the 16th. Currently, I expect it to be a drop on Friday, followed by an up move on the 16th on Monday. In fact, I think it might be a large move. That said, around this time this week, or perhaps this week and next week, will be, I think, a top for the stock market for the upcoming weeks, if not several months. And I think after the up move on the 16th, the market may actually turn to down by the 19th and or 20th. I think the up move on the following Monday, the 16th, might be under due to some exciting or unexpected news either over the weekend, especially on Sunday, the 15th, and or Monday, the 16th. However, that excitement may start waning by the I'd say 19th or maybe 20th of November, and so anything that might reach a peak or some assets that might be perhaps overvalued this week into like early next week, the 16th, more or less, 1 or 2 days, I'd say they actually may go down by the 19th and 20th, and subsequently I think the market will go down for at least a few weeks after that, if not several months. So we're definitely at this kind of a peak, maybe of a bubble. This week we will have Pluto conjunct Jupiter being fairly exact, and that typically would coincide with, ballooning debt or sort of these increased expectations. And there's also increased probability this week, as well as next week, but progressively less, of major developments that have to do with power shifts, as in literally the tops of governments, corporations, or some deals or some developments that relate to power plants, like especially nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons, including any sort of from the inventions to accidents that may spread either radiation or some news about proliferation of the nuclear weapons, or perhaps news about changes in how power plants are operated, or in how many nuclear, especially power plants, there are in the world. So that's kind of this general overview. Now, in terms of the energy for specific days of the week, on Monday the 9th, and then also on the 12th of November, which is Thursday, there may be increased focus on either deals or the value of entities, businesses, products related to especially either weapons, military, or sports. So it could be some deals involving these areas, or perhaps there's some pending agreement or a sale, or some athlete is expecting, a large payout or something like that. And at that time, things may not quite go as well as planned, where there may be either disagreement about who should be supporting whom, what are the conditions of the agreement, or perhaps the cost will be deemed too high, or the athlete or company will be seen as asking for too much, and this kind of a negotiation may continue, and there may be follow-up to the developments on Monday that may come up on the 12th on Thursday. And let's see, there may also be development on Monday related to, as I said, as well as all week, but especially on Monday, that may have to do with like nuclear power or power plants, as well as recycling businesses, or any sort of storage that is hidden or buried underground. And this week, and again, in the continuing, of course, months, but slowly sort of this week, the energy is peaking, that's ripe for anything that's been buried, any sort of like trash or things that were supposed to be stored and hidden, either literally some waste basically, or perhaps it's something that is a scandalous kind of information that was supposed to be hidden this week and again in upcoming months, but this week particularly it will be hard to hide that. Or if, say, there is an accident or earthquake or flood, that sort of the dirty material or that dangerous information or illegal kind of secretive information will potentially come up to the surface. It will be just too much of it. It will be hard kind of to hide that. Let's see. Then, generally speaking, as I said, from approximately 5th of November to, I would say, the 19th, regardless of the direction of the market, we may expect greater than usual like market fluctuations and large moves. And again, like I said, this might be a major sort of top or bottom, most likely top, I think, at this time for the market. Other kind of energy that will occur about, like I said, this week and maybe through 19th of November is either major laws changed or reforms that have to do with, say, police or increased anger over some sort of actions that are taken by either police or Secret Service type of entities, and there may be therefore some legal interventions to somehow address that. Or perhaps there may be some major changes in how, say, immigration is handled, or long distance transportation and travel. So there may be some major changes and basically that affect movement of people and goods across borders. Another possible sort of energy that right now is peaking this week is potential for, again, scandals or attacks on or violence that relates to, or rather can involve, judges or lawyers or professors or foreign nationals, immigrants, higher education sort of locations, students, etc. So last time where we had this kind of energy, just a few months back, we had a famous judge was attacked. So it will be something along the same lines potentially. Or there may be, again, a scandal where it is discovered like a professor is potentially a spy, or some sort of a hidden situation is uncovered where maybe there's this scheme, to basically enable somebody like international students to get entry into some universities, and it's discovered, or some sort of basically illegal activities associated with that may be again discovered and stopped, or the law is implemented to prevent something like that. So for US, this particular period, as well as for China, actually these are of course important periods in their history, and that's associated with important transits that are occurring to their charts. So for US, this time period from about the 3rd to 16th of November, and especially 9th and 10th, may see increased focus on things like oil, gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, water, navy, beverages, movies, religion, drugs, etc. So all these Neptunian matters, and these matters may be kind of more prominent in the news. And at the same time, there may be increased of either quantity of these products, maybe like too much oil, or perhaps or availability of these, too many various kind of pharmaceuticals to choose from, or something that's so abundant that perhaps their value therefore may go down. And let's see. There may also be news about some sort of either source of funding approved for any kind of one of these areas, or perhaps there may be a decision made, perhaps by the government, that makes it easier to move such goods, maybe to import-export oil, or to transport particular pharmaceutical or chemical across borders or from one place to another. And there may also be news about increase in banks' assets and or real estate prices. For China, from about the end of October through the end of November, is a time period where there may be increased focus also on things like oil, gas, navy, water, flooding, etc., pollution as well, deception, but also on any sort of financial kind of news, such as, the rates, loans, earnings, banks, etc., and related to this last area like rates, loans. There may be important announcements coming at the end of October and then also at the end of November. And at the end of October, as I mentioned last week, there already was an announcement where basically the changes that were made would seem to be facilitating the situation such that the yuan could move higher. And so there may be a follow-up, either a decision or something along the same lines coming up at the end of November that potentially will be like some sort of financial policy change that may be pursuing kind of higher earnings more aggressively, or specifically is aimed at changing the value of yuan, especially with respect to US dollar. And at the same time for China, this whole month of November may be somewhat difficult, as in like there may be opportunities, of course, for greater gains, but also opportunities for too much, either having to do with basically, I guess maybe too much oil, crude oil being stored and not enough being used, or too much water, again, flowing sort of without control. So potential for flooding, and again, that flooding may lead to some excessive pollution or something that's been buried, maybe washed out, and to the, on the shore or up and pollute the soil, and or there may be just announcements about some major initiatives that specifically have to do with like Navy, shipbuilding, or with maybe taking care of pollution or related to recycling. Let's see, so as I mentioned, the 12th may see some focus again on deals or sales of products that are related to like weapons, military, or sports, or like fast cars perhaps. And there either may be follow-up to the negotiations that began on Monday, and or there may be some sort of changes in, for example, the costs of, the particular deal or transaction are better defined, or the value drops compared to what the discussed value was on Monday. And that's global influence. And Friday probably will be Friday, and of course into weekend will be the most sort of intense day for this week, with greater increased probability of major either shifts, geopolitical shifts, reshuffling of the tops of governments and corporate corporations, and greater than usual market moves. And on Thursday, Friday, as I mentioned, I think the market may go down, especially on Friday, and as early as Friday, but most likely Sunday into Monday, there may be surprising announcements, and those may have to do with either banks, financial institutions, taxes, rates, currencies, especially cryptocurrencies, debt, loans, etc. And then additionally, or perhaps instead, there may be news related to companies that are related to IT, telecommunications, electric cars, airlines, aerospace, high tech, social media. So there may be either surprising deals or surprising changes in their policies or surprising news, and that most likely will trigger fairly large move. And at the same time, again, there will be surprising news, but also at the same time there may be, like I said, increased in debt or some legal even changes that specifically govern rates, taxes, tariffs, and or immigration, and or moves, like I said, of goods or people across borders. So all of those will be seeing some sort of changes or some events at the same time on especially Sunday and Monday, 15th and 16th. That said, whatever maybe companies or stocks or products that will jump in the value on the 16th, which is the following Monday, may actually be then may drop, their value may drop because again there may be seen as too much, sort of too overpriced, and the reason for the jump may not be necessarily based on what's actually happening, but rather in some expectation and some exuberant optimism about something, and or about some maybe law being changed. But then by the 19th and 20th of November, there may be some either kind of more of a cooler heads may prevail, or a long-term sort of more conservative approach may be kind of more favored by investors, and whatever was overpriced around the 16th may drop in value. And then finally, as a follow-up to these events from 16th plus minus, again it may begin as early as this Friday the 13th, there may be some follow-up situation around the 28th of November, where either if there's a deal announcement, and maybe announced this week or early next week the 16th, there may be follow-up situation on the 28th, that perhaps the terms of the deal are going to be better defined, or the value of whatever, maybe the company, for example, if there's a sale or some acquisition, the value, again, there is a surprising change regarding the value come November 28th. And generally speaking, for US, starting about November 13th, so Friday, through December 10th, and especially November 18, 19, and then December 3 through 10, there may be increased news about banks, financial institutions, their earnings, as well as, again, rates, loan, debt, taxes, and let's see, those specifically may relate to like communication and transportation businesses, and perhaps education. And again, we may hear about either some deals or sales or some negotiations, especially with international partners, and there may be some legal changes that will affect how these businesses operate, and under conditions perhaps for borrowing of the money, or some tax obligations, or something that basically some sort of a financial changes, and that they may be of legal nature that affect, again, specifically as communication transportation businesses in the US, or maybe even some news about bankruptcies. And the situation may involve some initial restrictions, or some greater controls perhaps, or some sort of difficult conditions that may be imposed around November 18th, 19th. However, these conditions, these restrictions may subsequently be lifted in early December, or the situation may improve by early December. That's for the US. And as I mentioned before already throughout my weekly predictions, starting even from the beginning of this year, is that this whole year, 2020, we have had, and we will continue having through the end of this year, the influence of this really slowly unfolding transit, the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn, now also Jupiter in Capricorn, where basically this would normally coincide with major geopolitical changes, changes in leadership, where old leaders who were in power for a long time may be removed, and just power changes hands. And also this coincides with increased probabilities of various disasters, pandemics of various sorts, like we had AIDS in the 80s under the same Saturn-Pluto difficult aspect. And this week, this influence will peak around the 12th through 16th of November. Similarly, throughout the whole year, we have this energy that coincides, like I said, with, again, changes in governmental regulations, controls, and some various shakeups, either again at the tops of governments, corporations, but also shakeups as in like earthquakes, or some tall object falling down, and various disasters, even wars and protests. And this year, particularly August and November, I would say the worst months, where we will have the most sort of unrest in those areas. Let's see, and then for, I guess, both globally and for China, November is also the month where we may see increased news about anything to do with like nuclear power or recycling businesses, or anything, as I mentioned before, that's buried underground. So on the positive, I guess, manifestation, we may hear about some major discoveries, that maybe some old, grave was discovered and something amazing, beautiful jewelry or whatever, and this will actually be something that will inform the world about, something interesting and unusual. However, on the negative side, it could be, again, some accident leading to pollution or even to increased radiation, and a particular site is contaminated. Or yet, I guess, on the positive side, there may be an initiative either globally and or specifically, again, for China. This seems to be particularly, important, just based on their natal chart, that may have to do with like nuclear power, some sort of a new initiative to develop, I guess, more power. And at the same time, if things are not introduced correctly, again, there's a increased probability at this time for an accident and things kind of going out of control. At the same time, for China, this also is the time, this week in particular, where they may announce new initiatives that have to do with also navy or oil or gas exploration, and whatever is announced, especially this week, but through about November 20th, may be on a particular large scale, and or something that's particularly adventurous, rather ambitious, that has, again, not really been done before, like a particularly powerful navy vessel may be powered by some nuclear engine or whatever, and or some sort of a major like route that goes through like mountains or underground, or something that requires a lot of power basically to accomplish, and it's really like monumental in scale. Let's see, for US, this whole period from about September through December may see increased in news about like earnings, banks, financials, and there is increased probability of some news about either restructuring related to like banks or rates, and at this time there may be increased focus on perhaps either reducing the number of locations or reducing services or some other voluntary cuts, basically to preserve, I guess, the assets. Let's see. As I said already before several times, I think that for China, this particular weekend, and in fact the whole month of November, may see increased focus on things like pollution, navy, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and this may have to do with, like I said, maybe coming up with the major ambitious project, maybe involving like a major, change in some, I don't know, navy and vessels that are bigger, than before, for example. Or it could be related to this COVID pandemic, where we most likely will see the last wave, both globally and especially for China, of like the last sort of a effort where maybe there's going to be the last final peak. But at the same time, in China, there may be news about either vaccine or some developments that may transform the attitude towards how this situation is handled, be it again through changes of sort of medical reform, or reform as how the research is conducted, or coming up with the either cure or medicine or vaccine that may address the situation sort of once and for all. And I think that for specifically this COVID-19, by the end of the year, after this November, perhaps November being the last large wave of that, I think we will be done with this particular situation. Although, as I mentioned in my long-term sort of predictions previously on this channel, as well as on my blog at lastunka.com, that I do see where in the future, starting through about the end of the 2024 and then 2025, we will have Saturn conjunct Neptune, and that actually is an aspect that had previously coincided with the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, and that is actually where we may see another major wave of concerns, not necessarily about this particular virus, but about maybe another either virus or some infectious disease or something that truly may be dangerous, I guess, worldwide, not to sort of scare, but it could be something, another sort of medical sort of issue that may be concerned on a large global scale. Let's see. And finally, as I mentioned previously, this particular month of November may see increased focus globally on things like oil, gas, floods, chemicals, and again, all of these sort of Neptunian topics, specifically oil. And at this time, we may have again this large sort of increase, I guess, in the availability of oil. At the same time, these developments may continue where this focus on sort of oil and or countries that are oil producers or import, export, or have gas, oil, and have a lot of like routes maybe going through them. The focus on these kind of topics will continue through February 2021, and starting from about like November, but especially getting into January, especially second half of January, maybe around the 26th or so of January, may coincide with some really surprising changes or surprising sort of intensification, where there may be some important developments related to those areas, and they may have to do with, they may not necessarily be stemming from like oil or gas related topics, but rather they may be sort of a side effect of some other ongoing developments, that perhaps there is like service outages or power outages or some unexpected attacks, like especially from the air, and just that the situation related to oil and gas, either development or transportation, may be as a side effect, I think, affected by those other surprising developments, and may coincide or result rather in volatility in the stock market, especially around January 18 and 29 through 29 rather, 2021. But at this time, this week, basically we'll see more or less at the beginning of this kind of increasing focus on, again, oil, gas exploration, chemicals, and related areas, but they will continue to intensify, and it will be more, I think, in January when there will be really massive scale sort of either changes and but again, not necessarily related to oil like industry per se, but rather that these areas, like for example oil transportation, may be affected by some surprising developments related to like again airlines, for example, or surprising power outages, or maybe there's a grounding of airlines, and therefore obviously the demand for oil may go down. So it will be more like a consequence of some other surprising changes related to like IT, airlines, power companies, electricity, etc. And at the same time, with this turmoil, there may be more like fighting either among the countries that are oil like producers, or fighting that's happening in the areas where the oil is being produced or transported or refined or whatever. And basically, because of these tensions, the oil production and transportation may be affected. So I think we'll wrap it up here. If you want to read more about these predictions and some other upcoming predictions, you can check me out also on my tolstunka.com blog, and I will try in the upcoming weeks to put out some just general sort of summary predictions for 2021, and then towards the end of the year, usually at the end of December, maybe earlier if I can, I'll put out some more detailed predictions for the upcoming year, which may not see as many sort of like serious changes perhaps as 2020 has, but definitely early months of the year, especially January into early February, then April definitely may be quite eventful, but the focus may shift on things that have to do with like airspace, IT, artificial intelligence, and things of that nature. So there may be some interesting developments happening there, and we will talk about this in the future editions of this blog. Until then, have a great week, everyone, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.